Imagine stepping into a garden where every corner whispers a story of transformation, where ordinary scraps and forgotten objects are reborn into charming creations that delight the senses. Welcome to TERAFLORA Studio, where we explore the art of turning what once seemed useless into treasures that bring warmth, beauty, and calm to your own outdoor space. Today, we invite you to observe, emulate, and gently adapt these ideas, embracing the philosophy of observe, copy, and modify, allowing your imagination to flourish alongside your hands. In this journey, you will witness how broken tiles become radiant sunbursts underfoot, how empty bottles shimmer like jewels in the sun, and how rustic wood and clay transform into timeless structures that seem to hum with life. Each project is not just a visual delight. It is an invitation to pause, to notice, and to appreciate the subtle details that often go unseen. The curve of a vine, the gentle trickle of water, the way light catches a fragment of glass and turns it into magic. As you follow along, remember that every idea here is crafted to inspire, and the process itself is a meditation. The content you are about to see is carefully composed using AI, bringing together storytelling, practical tips, and visual imagination in a seamless way to guide your creativity. If you find your mind wandering into possibilities, let it linger there. And if your heart feels the pull to create, let your hands follow. To continue experiencing these enchanting transformations, we warmly invite you to subscribe to TERAFLORA Studio. By subscribing, you join a community of makers and dreamers, a space where ideas bloom, guidance flows, and every project nurtures both skill and serenity. So, take a deep breath, let the garden's whispers surround you, and step into a world where discarded pieces are given new life, and where beauty is found in patience, care, and imagination. Sometimes beauty begins with what we nearly throw away. Imagine standing in your garden and watching plain green bottles, emptied, forgotten, reborn into something luminous. With just a wooden frame, patience, and a little vision, these bottles transform into a wall that catches sunlight like liquid gemstones. By day, the glass turns sunshine into emerald light, shimmering softly against leaves and herbs nearby. By night, a simple lantern placed behind the bottles creates an enchanting glow, as though your backyard borrowed a touch of Tuscan vineyard magic. There is a calmness that comes from such a wall. It doesn't shout for attention, yet your eyes can't help but linger on the green glow. Each bottle, once a vessel of ordinary moments, now holds a new story, whispering of harvests, laughter, and second chances. This is the quiet genius of upcycling, turning emptiness into abundance, transforming waste into wonder. The process is as simple as it is rewarding. Collect bottles of similar tones, deep emerald, bright green, or even mixed hues if you want more texture. Build a strong wooden rack or frame, ensuring the bottles are snug but not under pressure. When aligned in rows, the bottles become bricks of light. In the daytime, they capture the sky. At sunset, they hold fire. It is less about perfection, more about rhythm, about creating harmony between glass, wood, and the surrounding garden. One practical tip: place fragrant herbs such as rosemary or thyme along the base of the wall. As sunlight warms the bottles, the scent of the herbs rises with the glow, creating a sensory experience that feels luxurious, though it costs almost nothing. For evenings, position a soft light source behind or beneath the wall. An LED strip, solar lanterns, or even a candle in a glass jar. The light will filter through the bottles and turn your garden into a stage where shadows and colors dance. This wall doesn't just divide space, it creates atmosphere. It's both a backdrop and a beacon, both structure and story. And each time you walk past, you'll be reminded that beauty isn't always bought. Sometimes it's discovered in the things we rescue, reshaped by our hands, and reborn in the glow of simple green glass. There is something timeless about walking beneath an arch. Perhaps it is the sense of crossing into another world, or the way the curve frames the sky above. When built from reclaimed timber, an arch becomes more than structure. it becomes a memory reborn, a quiet echo of Roman courtyards adapted for a humble garden. Imagine rough beams of wood, once part of forgotten fences or old furniture, reshaped into a graceful curve. The timber carries its history in scratches, knots, and weathered marks, but softened with a lime wash or left raw to reveal its grain, it becomes dignified again. At the crown sits a simple keystone, a reminder of strength through balance. Ivy curls along its edges, weaving softness into sturdiness, until the whole structure feels both ancient and alive. To step beneath such an arch is to feel a shift in rhythm. The air seems cooler, the light gentler. Suddenly, your backyard feels like a sanctuary where history lingers. The arch doesn't need grandeur. Its presence alone is enough to transform a corner into a threshold, an entrance into stillness. Building it is less daunting than it looks. Salvage old beams or planks. Look for pieces with character rather than perfection. Arrange them in a curve using simple supports or brackets, securing each with patience. If you add a keystone detail at the center, it will not only strengthen the form but also give it a sense of authenticity, as though it were borrowed from an old villa. Over time, allow plants to claim it. Climbing roses, jasmine, or ivy will soften the lines and turn timber into living architecture. Practical tip: hang a lantern from the keystone. By day, it frames the arch with charm. By night, it transforms the passage into a glowing threshold. A solar lantern works beautifully, casting golden light without effort. This small detail will make every walk through the arch feel ceremonial, a moment of pause before you continue. The beauty of this design lies in its honesty. It doesn't pretend to be marble or grand stone. It embraces its wooden soul, carrying history forward in every grain. To pass beneath it is to cross from ordinary into extraordinary, to be reminded that even discarded wood can rise again, not just as timber, but as a story told in curves and shadows. There is a quiet kind of beauty in broken things. A mirror once discarded for its cracks can become the very soul of a garden corner. When gathered into a niche, its fragments no longer reflect only faces. They scatter light, capturing the sky, the leaves, and the warmth of lanterns into a dance of silver and fire. Picture a simple alcove in your garden wall. By day, the sun strikes the fractured surfaces, sending glimmers across the ground like tiny jewels. Each shard tells its own story of breakage, yet together they create a backdrop that is alive with movement. Clouds drift, branches sway, and the mirror pieces catch them all, painting them back in fleeting flashes. By dusk, when a lantern flickers nearby, the broken glass transforms into a constellation, multiplying one flame into a dozen stars. This design is as much metaphor as decoration. It teaches us that imperfection can be radiant, that fragments can still shine when placed in harmony. To stand before such a niche is to feel a strange intimacy, as if the garden is whispering your own reflection back to you. Not as a whole, but as a mosaic, imperfect yet luminous. Creating this feature requires care, but not extravagance. Collect broken mirrors or glass, smoothing edges where needed for safety. Arrange them inside a wall niche, frame, or even a simple wooden box fixed against a backdrop. For best results, vary the angles slightly so light strikes differently across the day. Ivy or moss along the edges softens the hardness of glass, blending man-made with natural textures. Practical tip: place fragrant plants nearby, lavender, jasmine, or roses. Their reflection in the shards adds depth, making the niche feel alive with both color and scent. At night, set a lantern or solar light close by. The glass will catch the glow and amplify it, creating a spectacle far greater than its humble materials suggest. What once was broken and unwanted now becomes the heart of enchantment. The shimmer niche is not about perfection. It is about story, about resilience, about light finding its way through cracks. Each time you pass, it will remind you that even in pieces, beauty can multiply. And perhaps, as you linger, you'll see yourself differently too. Patched together, imperfect, but shining all the same. There are moments when still water feels like a doorway. A pool so calm it becomes more than water. It becomes sky, clouds, flowers, and memory all woven into one quiet surface. The mini infinity reflecting pool brings that feeling into your garden, turning a simple trough or basin into a theater of reflection. By day, its surface holds the lavender bending gently above, the drift of clouds, the flicker of sunlight. Look once and you see the garden doubled. Look again and you realize the pool has no clear boundary. The rim is hidden, the edge invisible. So water seems to merge endlessly with its surroundings. The effect is both simple and profound. A small pool that feels vast because it contains the sky itself. At dusk, when a lantern is set nearby, the water glows gold, as if a piece of the sun melted and lingered for the night. Every ripple catches the flame, multiplying it into constellations. It is intimate, delicate, and utterly mesmerizing. Such a pool does not dominate the garden. It invites stillness. It teaches pause. Building it is a joy of simplicity. Any shallow basin or watertight container can serve as the base. Hide the rim by burying it slightly or covering it with stone or plants, so the edge disappears from view. The water then appears endless, a trick of perspective that costs nothing but imagination. For depth, paint the basin interior black or line it with dark tiles. This deepens the reflection and makes colors more vivid. Practical tip: place the pool where it can capture the best reflections. Under a tree, it will echo branches. Near flowers, it will double their blossoms. Even a small space, a corner patio or a narrow garden strip, can hold one. Keep the water clear, perhaps adding a drop of natural dye to darken it, or float a single flower on its surface for elegance. The pool is more than a feature, it is a mood. Each time you lean over it, you are drawn into silence, into noticing what usually passes by unseen. And in that pause, you realize that beauty is not always in grandeur but in reflection, in how the world mirrors itself in the simplest of places. In a small pool, infinity whispers. Rust has a way of carrying memory. It speaks of rain that once fell, of time slowly passing. When iron beams, weathered and stained with rust, rise again as a pergola, they bring their history into the garden. And when softened by vines and illuminated by falling strands of curtain lights, the structure transforms into something both raw and tender, a canopy where time and light mingle. By day, the pergola stands honest and unadorned, its reddish-brown surfaces recalling factories, wagons, or tools long forgotten. Vines creep upward, weaving softness into the rigid frame. Feels grounded, strong, almost solemn. But as evening descends, the garden changes. Curtain lights cascade from the beams like a waterfall of stars, shimmering gently with every breeze. Suddenly, the pergola no longer looks heavy. It glows with quiet grace, holding a constellation in its arms. Sitting beneath it feels like stepping into a private celebration. Laughter becomes warmer here, conversations slower, silence deeper. Even a simple cup of tea turns into a banquet framed by golden light. The magic lies not in extravagance, but in contrast, the roughness of rust against the delicacy of illumination. Together they tell a story of balance. Strength softened by grace, age brightened by renewal. Creating this is easier than it appears. Old iron frames, pipes, or beams can form the skeleton. Rust need not be hidden. Embrace it, seal it lightly to protect but keep its character. Train vines such as jasmine or bougainvillea to climb, adding life to the metal. For lighting, curtain string lights are affordable and transformative. Hang them from the crossbeams so they fall in soft vertical lines, glowing like rainfall frozen in midair. Practical tip: use warm white lights instead of cold tones. Warmth blends better with rust and greenery, creating atmosphere rather than harsh glare. Power them with solar panels if possible, so they come alive each evening without effort. Add a small table or bench beneath, and you have a corner that invites gathering, reflection, or solitude. This pergola does more than provide shade. It frames moments. It teaches that beauty can rise from what ages, that even rust can shine when paired with tenderness. And each night, when the lights awaken, you will feel time itself pause, history and hope glowing softly above your head. Sometimes beauty comes not from what is whole, but from what has fallen apart. A broken pot, scattered into fragments, may look like the end of its story. Yet in the garden, those shards can rise again, arranged like the remnants of an ancient ruin. With vines weaving through the cracks and moss softening the edges, they whisper of temples long forgotten, of time carving grace into loss. By day, the terracotta glows in warm shades of orange and red, each shard catching sunlight like aged bricks in an old courtyard. The vines curl gently around them, binding pieces together as though nature herself were stitching history back into place. Moss gathers in the crevices, turning sharp lines into velvet, making the ruins look as though they had stood there for centuries. At dusk, when a lantern flickers nearby, shadows dance across the broken surfaces, and suddenly the small ruin feels grand, like a miniature relic rediscovered in your backyard. There is something deeply moving about this transformation. The brokenness no longer feels like waste. It becomes story, texture, atmosphere. To sit near it is to be reminded that even after fracture, beauty lingers, perhaps even deepens. It is imperfection turned into theater. Creating such ruins is simple yet artful. Gather broken pots or terracotta fragments, those that might otherwise be thrown away. Instead of hiding the breaks, arrange them into small walls, arches, or clusters, leaning pieces against one another. Add soil in the gaps and allow vines to take root. Ivy works beautifully, but even herbs such as creeping thyme can soften the structure. Over time, moss will claim the damp spaces, completing the illusion of age. Practical tip: place the ruins at a shaded corner or near taller plants. This encourages moss to thrive and gives the shards a chance to look older more quickly. A lantern or candle placed nearby at night will turn the ruin into a stage where light and shadow perform, making it feel alive with mystery. This design is not about grandeur. It is about poetry. Proves that endings can become beginnings, that brokenness can be an artist too. And each time you glance at those humble shards now dressed in green, you will feel as though you've stumbled upon history. A small ruin that teaches resilience, right in your own garden. Beneath your feet, the ground can become a canvas. A pathway is often only about function, guiding steps from one place to another. But when broken tiles are given new life, the path becomes art. A radiant sunburst, a spiral of color and geometry that transforms the act of walking into a small ritual of wonder. Picture fragments of terracotta red, soft beige, and hints of blue, arranged in a pattern that seems both ancient and fresh. Sunlight falls across the glossy shards, and suddenly the path glimmers as though it were painted with light. In the early morning, dew magnifies the colors, turning the mosaic into a tapestry of stone and water. By afternoon, shadows from nearby plants stretch across it, weaving movement into the design. This pathway does not only guide your steps, it slows them. Each shard tells a story of fracture and renewal, yet together they create harmony. To walk upon it is to be reminded that beauty is not always in perfection but in arrangement, in the patience of fitting broken pieces into a whole. Building such a pathway is as much about vision as it is about craft. Collect old tiles, even mismatched or chipped ones. Break them into manageable pieces and plan your design on the ground like a puzzle. You don't need symmetry. What matters is rhythm, curves, rays, spirals that echo the sunburst motif. Use mortar or concrete as the base, pressing shards carefully so their edges sit level for safe walking. Practical tip: play with color contrasts. Earth tones create warmth, while occasional fragments of blue or white add sparkle, like stars within the sunburst. Frame the path with low herbs, thyme, oregano, or creeping rosemary. As you walk, their fragrance rises, adding another layer of experience to the journey. At night, lanterns placed along the edges make the shards glow again, the mosaic reflecting their flickering light like stained glass laid upon the earth. It is a pathway that feels ceremonial, even in a modest garden, as though each step is part of a story unfolding. This is the genius of upcycling. Waste reborn not as filler but as beauty. A broken tile may no longer hold a kitchen wall, but here, in the garden, it becomes a sunburst beneath your feet, reminding you that renewal is always possible, and beauty is always waiting to be pieced together. As daylight fades, a garden begins to breathe differently. Shadows lengthen, the air cools, and silence gathers like a soft blanket. Then, almost as if answering the dusk, jars along a pathway awaken. Each one holds a small flame, each one a quiet beacon. Together, they form a colonnade of light, simple glass containers reborn as guardians of wonder. By night, the walkway glows with a rhythm that feels ceremonial. The jars, once filled with pickles, preserves, or forgotten goods, now line the path like a row of sentinels. Each candle flickers inside its glass, multiplying warmth and casting golden arcs across gravel and leaves. The symmetry recalls grand avenues of ancient places, yet here it is scaled to the intimacy of a backyard. Walking through, you feel guided not just by light, but by quiet magic. The beauty of this design lies in its simplicity. Collect jars of any size, mason jars, old jam containers, even mismatched bottles. Wash them clean and place tea lights or small candles within. Arrange them in pairs or rows along a garden path. By dusk, light them and watch as the garden transforms into a theater where every step feels like part of a procession. Practical tip: for safety and ease, use LED tea lights or solar jar lights. They flicker convincingly like real flames and can be left outdoors without worry. For added fragrance, slip in sprigs of rosemary or lavender beside the candles. The heat releases a gentle aroma that mingles with the glow. The colonnade is not only for guests. It is for you, too. To walk the path at night, guided by a trail of fireflies and jars, is to rediscover the joy of slowing down. Even familiar corners of the garden feel mysterious under their glow. The jars remind us that elegance can be born from the simplest of vessels, that beauty does not need grandeur. It only needs light and care. Stand at the entrance of such a path and look forward. The line of jars seems endless, as though stars have fallen to earth and chosen to rest along your walkway. With every step, you move deeper into their glow, carrying with you the lesson that discarded things can shine brightest when given a second life. At the threshold of the garden, a wheel stands still. Once it carried journeys, roads traveled, goods delivered, lives moved forward. Now it rests, lifted into a new purpose, a gate of welcome, a symbol of arrival. Its spokes radiate like the sun, touched with gold that glimmers softly in daylight. Ivy curls along its rim, weaving together age and renewal, memory and hope. By day, the wagon will feel ceremonial. It marks a passage, not grand like stone arches, but warm, humble, and deeply human. To step through it is to leave behind the ordinary world and enter a realm shaped by care and imagination. By night, when a lantern burns at its base, shadows spread across the ground, each spoke casting lines of light like a starburst on Earth. The wheel becomes more than wood and iron. It becomes a guardian of transitions, a silent storyteller. Making such an entrance is an act of preservation as much as creation. Find an old wheel, whether wooden or iron-rimmed, weathered by time. Clean it gently but leave its scars. They speak of history. Add touches of gold leaf or metallic paint along the spokes, not to erase the past, but to honor it, like sunlight lingering on old paths. Set the wheel upright, framed with simple posts, and let plants embrace it. Ivy, roses, or even bougainvillea will soften its edges, turning a relic into a living threshold. Practical tip: position the wheel where paths meet. It works beautifully as a symbolic gate, even without hinges. Place a lantern or solar light nearby so the spokes cast patterns at night. If you wish to enhance the sense of passage, create a low stone border or wooden frame around the base to anchor the design. The magic of the wagon wheel lies not only in its form but in its meaning. It reminds us that beauty can be found in stillness, that movement is not the only way to carry a story. A wheel that no longer turns can still guide us, into gardens, into reflection, into spaces where time feels slower. To pass through such a gate is to feel welcomed not only into a garden, but into a story that continues, glowing quietly in spokes of gold. Water has always carried music. It hums softly as it flows, weaving sound into silence. In a garden, a tiered clay jar terrace becomes a gentle instrument, each jar a note, each drop a pause, until the whole structure hums like a quiet song. Picture clay jars once used to store grain or water, their surfaces worn by years of touch. Now, aligned in steps, they transform into a miniature staircase of flowing streams. From the highest jar, water spills into the one below, then again and again until it settles at the base in a pool that shimmers with light. By day, the terracotta glows warmly under the sun, moss creeping along the edges. By evening, lanterns placed beside the jars turn the cascade into liquid fire, each drop catching sparks of gold as it falls. Standing near, you feel not just the sight and sound but also the coolness in the air, the soft mist that brushes the skin. It is soothing, almost meditative, a reminder that beauty is not only visual but sensory. The terrace does not roar with grandeur, it whispers with intimacy. Building such a feature is easier than it seems. Old jars, even cracked or chipped, can be stacked with simple supports. Use a small pump to cycle water from the base back to the top. Conceal the mechanics with stones or plants, so all that remains visible is the rhythm of flow. Each jar should be slightly tilted to let the water spill naturally, as though time itself carved the path. Practical tip: place herbs like mint or thyme nearby. Their fragrance rises with the mist, adding freshness to the corner. If you want more charm, allow ivy to climb around the jars, or let moss naturally take hold over time. At night, set small lanterns or solar lights along the steps. The water will catch their glow and scatter it into movement, turning the terrace into a living lamp. The tiered jar terrace is more than decoration. It is a melody captured in clay and water, a reminder that even the simplest vessels can become instruments of peace. Each drop falling from one jar to the next carries history forward, teaching that beauty is found not only in flow but in the patience of descent. What once held the heaviness of paint can now cradle the lightness of blossoms. A paint can, utilitarian and ordinary, is not destined for beauty. Yet with a touch of transformation, it can rise again. This time as a marble-like planter, dignified and timeless, carrying flowers as though they were treasures. Picture a row of cans, once dented and stained, their surfaces now skimmed with cement, brushed with delicate gray veins. They echo the look of marble columns. Placed together, they resemble a miniature colonnade in some forgotten courtyard, yet scaled for a humble garden. Each can hold rosemary, lavender, or bright blossoms, their greens and purples softening the austere grace of stone. From afar, they seem relics from an old villa. Up close, their secret reveals itself. They are nothing but reclaimed paint cans, carrying beauty where once they carried labor. By day, sunlight glances across their smooth surfaces, casting shadows that feel almost architectural. By night, lanterns nearby lend them a golden glow, as though they had stood there for centuries. The effect is at once whimsical and noble, playful and elegant. Creating them is simple and forgiving. Clean old paint cans thoroughly, removing labels and rough edges. Coat them with a thin layer of cement or plaster, smoothing the surface. Before it dries fully, carve subtle veining lines with a brush dipped in darker paint or charcoal, mimicking marble's natural grain. Seal the surface to protect against weather. Once prepared, fill with soil and plants of your choice. Herbs work beautifully, turning the columns into fragrant guardians of your garden. Practical tip: arrange them in pairs or rows, mimicking the symmetry of classical architecture. They look especially charming along a pathway or framing an entrance. For variety, mix in sizes, some taller, some shorter, so the columns rise in rhythm. Over time, allow moss or patina to soften them further, deepening the illusion of age. This transformation is about more than aesthetics. It is about dignity, the idea that even the most overlooked vessel can aspire to grandeur. A paint can no longer useful in labor now holds life instead, reborn as planter, pillar, and quiet triumph. To stand among them is to feel a garden lifted, not by stone, but by imagination and care. There are places in a garden where time slows, where the world narrows to a frame of blossoms and filtered sky. A simple bench beneath a pergola can become such a place. And when crowned with bougainvillea, its vivid magenta blooms spilling downward in cascades, that corner transforms into a throne of stillness. The bench itself may be nothing more than palettes, whitewashed to soften their rough history. Yet placed under a modest pergola, it takes on new grace. Above, bougainvillea stretches and drapes, each cluster of blossoms catching the light like notes in an unseen melody. Petals drift gently to the ground, scattering color like confetti. Sitting here, you feel not just seated, but embraced by shade, by fragrance, by the fleeting beauty of falling flowers. By day, sunlight filters through the vines, dappling the seat with shifting lace. In the afternoon, the blossoms glow against the pale wood, turning the bench into a painting of color and calm. By night, lanterns hung nearby ignite the canopy, transforming the blooms into stars woven into branches. The garden itself seems to breathe differently in this spot. Slower, gentler, more intimate. Creating such a sanctuary is within reach. Salvage old palettes, sand them lightly, and coat with whitewash or diluted paint for a rustic glow. Build a simple pergola frame from reclaimed wood or even sturdy branches. Train bougainvillea to climb and spread across the beams. With time and patience, the pergola will be crowned in a living canopy of flowers. Practical tip: choose bougainvillea in strong colors, deep magenta or orange, so their brilliance contrasts with the pale wood. Place the bench where afternoon sun will strike the flowers, making them blaze with light. Add small lanterns or fairy lights at the edges for evening charm. This corner is more than furniture. It is a retreat, a place where solitude feels like a gift, where conversations soften, where the mind unwinds. A throne not for kings, but for moments, for quiet afternoons, for pages of a book, for the simple act of breathing among blooms. The bougainvillea crown turns what is discarded into regal beauty, proving that even the humblest bench can carry the grace of blossoms and the poetry of time. In gardens across the hills of Tuscany, columns rise not only in stone but in memory. They frame courtyards, hold vines, and lend dignity to even the humblest homes. In your own garden, old clay pipes can echo that timeless grace. Stacked one upon another, they rise like miniature Tuscan columns, softened by thyme, rosemary, and oregano spilling gently from their hollow centers. The pipes themselves may be fragments, once used to carry water or support walls. Worn and rough, they now stand upright, their earthy hue glowing warmly in sunlight. From a distance, they appear ancient, as if borrowed from a villa where vines once curled around marble. Up close, they speak of humility, of scraps given a new role. And when herbs cascade down their sides, the columns seem alive, their fragrance weaving through the air like a quiet hymn. By day, the terracotta warms under the sun, its surface glowing like fire held in clay. In the evening, lanterns nearby ignite their curves in soft gold, turning the columns into guardians of light and scent. They are not grand monuments. They are pillars of possibility, proof that beauty can rise from the simplest of materials. Creating them is wonderfully simple. Collect old clay pipes, short or tall, uniform or mismatched. Stack them carefully, securing with soil and small stones inside for balance. Fill each hollow with soil and plant herbs or trailing flowers. Over time, the greenery will cascade outward, softening every hard edge until the pipes look as though they had always belonged in the earth. Practical tip: Group the columns in odd numbers, 3, 5, or 7, for a rhythm that feels natural. Position them as a focal point near a pathway or as guardians flanking a bench or arch. Choose herbs you'll use often: basil, thyme, oregano, so the columns are not only beautiful but useful. As you brush past, the fragrance rises, adding another dimension of life. These Tuscan clay pipe planters remind us that even fragments can stand tall. What was once utility now becomes poetry, a dialogue between clay, leaf, and light. Each pipe holds not emptiness, but abundance. Each column whispers of places both far and familiar, carrying the dignity of Tuscan hillsides into the intimacy of your own garden. Rust is often seen as decay, as the end of usefulness. But when embraced, rust becomes character, a patina that speaks of years, weather, and labor. And when touched with strokes of gold, it transforms, no longer merely remnants of time, but relics of quiet beauty. In the garden, old metal cans can stand tall as gilded pedestals, each one carrying blooms like crowns. Picture tall cylinders, once containers for oil or grain, now weathered in shades of red-brown. The dents, the scratches, the scars, they remain, but instead of shame, they become texture. A brush of gold along the ridges and curves catches the sunlight, turning what was forgotten into something that glows with dignity. On top, pots of flowers burst in color, bright marigolds, trailing ivy, or fragrant herbs. Together, they resemble columns lifted from a rustic courtyard, regal in their imperfection. By day, the cans gleam subtly as the sun finds every gilded line. By night, lanterns placed nearby ignite the gold so it shimmers against the rust, as though fire itself has been painted into the metal. The effect is dramatic yet humble, refined yet raw, a balance only time and imagination can create. Making them is a joyful act of reinvention. Collect old cans, the taller the better. Clean them, but do not erase their story. Seal lightly to protect from further corrosion. Then brush streaks of gold paint or leaf onto raised areas. The gold should not cover but highlight, honoring the imperfections. Place soil or planters atop, allowing plants to spill over, softening the structure further. Practical tip: arrange the pedestals in a grouping, varying their heights to create rhythm. They work beautifully at the entrance of a pathway, flanking a bench, or clustered in a corner as a vertical garden. Choose plants with cascading growth, petunias, ivy, or herbs, so the softness flows downward against the strength of metal. The gilded rust can pedestals teach us that beauty does not always come polished. Sometimes it glows brightest when history is left visible, when age is honored, not hidden. They are guardians of imperfection, standing tall in the garden, proving that even the humblest scrap can rise into art. Beneath your feet, the ground can tell stories. When stone fragments, once discarded as useless, are gathered with patience, they become more than rubble. They weave themselves into a carpet, a mosaic of earth tones, a tapestry laid flat, a floor that feels at once rustic and refined. Imagine mismatched offcuts, jagged grays, warm browns, pale beiges. Each piece on its own may seem awkward, incomplete. Yet when fitted side by side, they resemble threads in a woven rug, a design born not from symmetry but from harmony. In the morning, sunlight glances across the rough surfaces, turning them silver. By evening, shadows soften the mosaic into muted fresco tones, as though time itself had painted the floor. This patio is not just a surface, it is a gathering place. Place a table here, a few chairs, perhaps a bench, and suddenly meals become more intimate, conversations more lingering. Herbs and terracotta pots around the edges add fragrance, weaving scent into the pattern of stone. To sit here is to rest upon a memory, to walk across fragments that found new life in togetherness. Creating such a floor requires little more than vision and patience. Collect offcut stones from construction yards or reclaimed piles. Their irregular shapes are the beauty. Do not trim them to perfection. Instead, Arrange them like puzzle pieces, letting gaps fall naturally. Fill those spaces with sand, gravel, or even creeping ground covers such as thyme, which will grow into the cracks and perfume the air with every step. Practical tip: embrace variety in color. A consistent palette gives calm, but small contrasts. An amber stone among grays, a dark piece beside pale ones. Add rhythm and surprise. For durability, lay the stones on compacted soil or mortar base. If you prefer softness, let moss grow freely between the gaps, so the patio feels alive and aged from the beginning. This mosaic patio is proof that beauty often lies in fragments, in what others overlook. It teaches that nothing is truly wasted when placed with care. Beneath your feet lies not only stone but a story of renewal, an imperfect yet enduring carpet woven by hands and earth. And each time you step across it, you will feel the quiet triumph of scraps turned into sanctuary. As our journey through the Garden of Transformation comes to a gentle close, take a moment to let the scenes linger in your mind. Every corner you've explored, every shard, bottle, and vine has its own story, quietly teaching us that even what was once overlooked can blossom into beauty. At TERAFLORA Studio, we celebrate this magic, the simple alchemy of turning discarded items into creations that bring joy, serenity, and wonder to everyday spaces. Notice how light plays across surfaces, how textures invite touch, how each project carries not only visual delight, but also a sense of calm. These gardens remind us that creativity is a patient companion, that transformation is both a process and a meditation. Even small actions, stacking a jar, arranging a tile, guiding a vine, become acts of mindfulness, moments where the ordinary is elevated into something extraordinary. We hope this experience has inspired you to see potential in the overlooked, to breathe life into forgotten objects, and to approach your own garden with curiosity, care, and imagination. Every corner you create can be a sanctuary, a place where color, scent, and form harmonize into quiet poetry. If your heart feels inspired and your mind curious to explore more ways to bring beauty into your space, we warmly invite you to subscribe to TERAFLORA Studio. By subscribing, you join a community of makers, dreamers, and gardeners, a space where ideas grow and creativity flourishes effortlessly. Your subscription is not just a click. It is an invitation to continue wandering, creating, and finding serenity in the art of transformation. So, let your hands move with intention, let your eyes linger on the details, and let your garden become a canvas of wonder. Remember, beauty waits patiently in every corner, in every fragment, ready to emerge under your touch and imagination.